So today I'm going to take a look at this organisation called Global Disinformation Index. So the first thing to notice about them is actually that their name is misleading because they've actually come up with their own definition of disinformation. Now, I don't know why they haven't come up with their own word to instead of disinformation rather than piggybacking on an already well understood term. Um, I don't know whether it's just convenience or whether there's something going on about trying to be misleading on purpose. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt in this case. So we can see here how they define disinformation and that they view it through the lens of adversarial narrative conflict, and it occurs when someone pushes an intentionally misleading narrative which is adversarial against democratic institutions, scientific consensus, or an at-risk group and which carries a risk of harm. Often these narratives are crafted using selected elements of fact. Pardon me. Now it's pretty well known that if people are arguing or engaged in debates, often they do use selected elements of facts. Sometimes it's just a matter of convenience, and you can't present all the facts to give a fully rounded picture. So, first of all, it's how do you disentangle people who have got a genuine disagreement from those who are intensely misleading. Now, maybe in some cases you can infer the intent, but in other cases it could be that people genuinely believe what they're saying and perhaps don't understand the problems with cherry picking data. So I kind of find this definition quite problematic. And because I talk about narratives, it certainly got me wondering if what this is really about is not trying to protect certain people or institutions from harm, but it in fact actually protects certain narratives. And I've not really seen anything to convince myself that it's not about protecting narratives. I mean, when it says how can you protect a scientific consensus, because they talk about this elsewhere, but scientific consensus is if the majority of scientists accept a particular scientific hypothesis or theory. So if we go to this page on their website here, it goes into more detail about why they've come up with this definition. So the first thing they're saying is, well, with the Santa Claus test, people tell their kids effectively that Santa Claus will bring them Christmas presents or whatever, but we actually know that Santa Claus doesn't exist. Although I think that's pretty kind of silly, example there. And then they actually go on to give an example from Breitbart of how this fits into their idea of adversarial narratives. That they claim that Breitbart website is chock full of local crime stories whose headlines mostly start with the phrase illegal alien. So I guess they're claiming that illegal aliens, or undocumented immigrants as they prefer, are actually somehow vulnerable, and this kind of reporting may ultimately lead to harm. But this kind of reporting is essentially creating, a well-known problem of availability bias, and we know that many media outlets do that, and that it can cause harm. So, for example, there is a lot of stories in the so-called reputable media about climate change, that there's a climate crisis or a climate emergency. They tend to focus on disasters and problems and predictions of very serious problems in the future, such as massive sea level rise or mass extinctions. They also talk about existential threats, and we know that this can actually lead to anxiety, particularly in young people. But I don't think, from what I've read here, I don't think that the GDI are really interested in this kind of thing. So I think what they're really trying to do here is protect certain narratives that they agree with and want to suppress those that they don't. I mean, that's not to say that there isn't unsavoury people out there with unsavoury views and using dishonest tactics to try and spread their views, but harm comes from well-intentioned people as well as those with more malicious intent. If we look at this page, it talks a bit more about the organisation. So they claim to be neutral in terms of they're non-political and non-partisan. They're independent in that they don't take funding from media companies or grants from technology companies. So I guess that is to try and avoid the problem of some media companies might try and use this as a way of suppressing their competitors. But it does say that they get funding from a wide range of sources, including governments. Now, I noticed that on another page, actually, that the British government fund them through the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, and also the American government through another organisation whose name I can't remember now. I think the acronym was NED. Now, I've actually read today that the Americans are actually going to stop funding GDI through that NED organisation. But I certainly always thought that Britain and America had freedom of press, and I will certainly question why our governments, or in fact any democratic governments, would be funding an outfit like this, which is clearly skewed to suppressing certain narratives that they effectively don't agree with, and ultimately letting off other narratives which are perhaps more accepted but themselves may have problems and cause harm. Now, when I saw that they'd redefined disinformation, I thought maybe they'd been reading a bit too much Lewis Carroll, because it kind of reminded me of a quote in reference to Humpty Dumpty. So we can see here from Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass, when I use the word Humpty Dumpty said in a rather scornful tone, it means just what I choose it to mean, neither more nor less. But the question is, said Alice, whether you can make words mean so many different things. The question is, said Humpty Dumpty, which is to be master, that is all. Now clearly they want to be master of the word here, a previously well understood word, and come up with their own definition, which they're certainly entitled to do, but we can certainly question whether they're actually making it misleading in doing so. So I'll put all these URLs in the description as usual, and I'd certainly be interested to hear in the comments from anybody what you actually think about this organisation. I mean, even if these people are well intentioned, we know that the road to hell can sometimes be paved with good intentions, and I personally think there's actually something a little bit sinister here, because I get the impression that, like I've just said previously, that this is probably about suppressing certain narratives which either inconvenient or that they just simply disagree with and don't like for whatever reason, from their own worldview or moral standpoint. And certainly, while there is dubious information on the internet, if we're going to have organisations trying to defund some of these media outlets, indirectly this way, I'm not too sure this is good for democracy as a whole.